Hey guys, I am Trent for Trent Sense, and I am here to talk to all of you about my thoughts on the Sony Ericsson Xperia X10. There were three main reasons as to why I decided to take on the X10 for review. And the first reason is the Android operating system. Second reason is the 4-inch capacitive touchscreen, which is a bit bigger than that of the 3.7-inch screen on the Nexus 1. And thirdly, the brand new interface created by Sony Ericsson, which was laid over the Android operating system. It has a very interesting look. You have a tall and narrow form factor that's very sleek, and the back of it had a pretty interesting curvature that made it easy to hold in the palm of your hand. With all of that being said, once I picked up the phone in my hand, it immediately felt cheap due to all of the plastic that is put into its construction. It felt extremely light in the hand, and there was hardly any weight to it whatsoever, even after I had installed the battery. Now, even though the device feeling cheap is not a deal breaker by any means, I think I would have liked to have seen a bit more effort on Sony Ericsson's part to include something that was a bit more metallic, to be able to put a little bit more weight to it so that it felt substantial in the hand and not so plasticky like a children's toy. Now, there were a couple of add-ons that were very welcomed for the X10. These were the hardware keys below the touchscreen, which did give a little bit of an easier experience when it came to navigating the operating system. And then you also had a cover over the micro USB port, which kept a lot of debris and lint out of it when it was in your pocket. When I first powered on the X10, I instantly fell in love with the blue interface on the device. 4.3 inches on the Evo 4G and the HD2, in my opinion, is just way too much. The phone becomes too wide, and it gets to the point to where it's just unwieldy and not portable. On the other hand, having just 4 inches on the X10 makes it much more perfect, in my opinion, because it is still more narrow than that of the HD2 and the Evo 4G, and I believe it is a little bit taller. Having a bigger screen than the 3.7 inches on the Nexus 1 really makes the X10 a great companion for viewing videos online for YouTube, as well as videos that are installed on my SD card, watching widescreen movies and 4:3 resolution movies really was a neat experience on the X10.
Stuck up your nose? Yeah, I tried to take a Tylenol for the pain, you know, and these Mexican pills are so big that I...
Did you enjoy the fresh air, Lisa?
Yeah, I did, Val, thanks.
Good, because that's the last time you leave the ward.
Using an older version of the Android operating system really didn't prove to be any problem for me. I had no problem adapting to what I was able to do on 1.6 versus 2.1 that I had on my Nexus 1. The one big downside to getting used to Android 1.6 was having to work around with only 3 desktop screens. Audio from the loudspeaker it's okay. It has plenty of volume for listening to media content, but it did have its moments to where it sounded tinny in overall feedback. And there was also some distortion when it came to being in the upper volume levels in certain genres of music. Now, the weird part about this is that this same loudspeaker proved to be a bit softer when it came to listening to speakerphone conversations. Unfortunately, the earpiece of the X10 didn't fare too well either when it came to providing enough volume. Listening to other people talking on the X10 really proved to be not as good as the Nexus 1. Weird experience that I had with the X10 is that even though it runs Android 1.6, you would think that it would automatically include your contacts and your calendar just by putting in your Google information for your new username and password. That was not the case. In order to get the contacts, I had to open up the phone book application on the X10 and do everything through the settings menu. Overall signal reception on the X10 was pretty good. I never once had to worry about a weak signal, even in my own home. I experienced not one drop call during my time with the X10. Battery life on the X10 can be very tricky depending on how you're using your phone. For me personally, I always have Wi-Fi on whenever I'm inside my house. I always have 3G data on, and being that I link to my Facebook and my Twitter a lot, I tend to have regular updates for those in addition to email. So there's constantly a lot of work going on within the device. So if you do a lot of media content viewing or listening, or if you do a lot of web browsing in addition to having a lot of automatic updates for your social networking applications or your emails, you're going to have to really watch out for the battery life on the X10, and needless to say, you may find yourself walking around with an adapter in your pocket, just in case. The 8 megapixel camera was pretty impressive when you consider what it has to offer on a smartphone. Using the interface was one of the most enjoyable moments personally with any smartphone. You have a way to do live previews in the same screen as the viewfinder. Access to different settings were very easy to get to, very intuitive. There is one complaint that I do have for the camera, and that is the LED flash. There is no configuration to make it an auto flash. You basically have to go into settings and turn the photo light on in order to take a picture with the flash, which makes no sense to me. It just taking pictures in well-lit situations turned out to not be so bad with the 8 megapixel camera. Taking video looked stunning with the frame rate. It looks smooth. There was no lagging. There was no skipping of any kind for frames. Typing with the virtual QWERTY keypad proved to be a huge headache because I ended up running into typos because there was inconsistent feedback with keys that I was pressing in the midst of emails or text messages. And overall, the typing experience on the X10 ended up being not as efficient as the iPhone or the Nexus 1. In addition to the inconsistent touch response of using the interface, whether it was typing with the virtual keypad or swiping one of the home screens, there was also the issue of a laggy performance from the interface. Timescape just became a waste of time. If I want to check my email, if I want to, access my photo gallery in any way, I'd rather just find the icon for the application, touch it, and be done with it. That's it. I didn't really feel the need to have all of that information brought to the screen with all of these flying panes of glass and stuff. I mean, it looks cute, it looks great, but if the phone can't back it up, and it ends up being slowed down by all of that eye candy, it needs to stop. It needs to just be turned off and never implemented again. Timescape and Mediascape is just overkill for what I need to do on my device. And I think Sony Ericsson could have done itself a favor if it did away with Timescape and Mediascape and focused more on making the X10 compatible with a more recent version of the Android operating system. Okay, I'm just going to be frank with you guys and share with you a huge problem that I've got with the X10. Using data from T-Mobile 3G at that time, it didn't happen automatically once I put my SIM card into the phone. Now, at first, this inconvenience was not that big of a surprise because in the past, with the P990 and the P1i and the M600, I basically had to go onto the Sony Ericsson website and have a special SMS message sent to me with the configurations for my particular network at that time. So it wasn't that big of a deal. I simply took the time to go to the Sony Ericsson website, and I ended up inputting my appropriate information for my carrier, my phone number, and I sat back and waited for an SMS message to bring me the configurations to my phone for both MMS and internet access. Now, I was informed by a Sony Ericsson tech rep that it could take anywhere between 24 to 48 hours to receive these configuration messages from Sony. I spent the next 2 days waiting for the messages, and they never showed up to the X10. None of them.
The number you have dialed has been changed. The new number is... Please note, the new number
So after saying all of that, the question still remains, do I recommend the X10 to other users? The answer would be no. I would not recommend it at all. I just don't have faith in Sony Ericsson that it would be able to provide a more efficient experience on the X10, especially in comparison to devices like, you know, the iPhone 4, the Evo 4G, and the Galaxy S. I don't know if Sony Ericsson will ever be able to help the X10 to be on the same level as those competing models. So to spend every day with that device, I think I would end up driving myself crazy, and I think I could say the same thing for many of you out there. When it comes to using a touchscreen phone, you want something that's going to be able to work efficiently and quickly throughout the day. You don't want to have to worry about typos in the midst of typing on a QWERTY keypad that happens to be unpredictable. You don't want to have to worry about turning on, you know, a photo light. You know, you don't want to have to worry about, you know, the performance of the interface getting slowed down because of all of the eye candy that's going on with the screen and the flying window panes and stuff. You don't want to have to worry about all of that. So until Sony Ericsson can release a firmware update that can make the UI a bit more snappy and not as lethargic, I wouldn't be able to recommend the X10 for anybody at this point, unless you happen to be a die-hard Sony Ericsson fan. So, with all of that being said, I will conclude this review of the X10 and bid you all farewell. Take care and stay safe.